Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to our intimate space. Today, we're unwrapping a story that began not with a bang, but with a whisper, the kind of silence that gently settles in, like a soft sigh between thoughts. Let's dive in. It all began with silences. Not the awkward kind, but those that softly insinuate themselves, like a sigh between two thoughts. My partner had been away for weeks, following a project in another city. I was alone in our apartment, my days filled with repetitive actions, morning coffee, household chores, walks through familiar streets, and a whole lot of solitude. One afternoon, a friend mentioned that a small bakery was looking for someone to help out in the evenings for a few hours. Nothing strenuous, just welcoming customers, tidying up a bit, cleaning. I accepted without a second thought. Not just for the extra income, though that was nice, but to hear other voices besides the radio. The bakery was tiny, with light wooden shelves, blue tiles, and a permanent scent of warm bread. The owner, a quiet person in their 50s with a lean silhouette and slow, controlled movements, greeted me with a discreet smile. They had that calm presence that doesn't need to make noise. Right. The first few days passed peacefully. They taught me the orders, the cash register, where each bread belonged. Then, I started to notice their gaze not intrusive, but a look that seemed to listen to my thoughts more than it sought my eyes. And then one evening they asked, "Can you stay a little after closing? I want to show you the oven." Few people ever go in there. They pulled down the metal curtain and opened the heavy red drape separating the workshop from the rest. They said something that I understood much later. Some places hold things you do on show to everyone. The oven room was cooler, lit by a single suspended bulb. Sacks of flour were piled against the wall, wooden boards aligned, utensils, clean its thing in its place. An almost sacred atmosphere. They spoke of bread, of sourdough, of the gestures that had to be repeated with patience. But their hands brushed mine more often than necessary. They told me they had worked alone for a long time, that they had known exhaustion and doubt. They didn't say everything, but I read it in their movements, in the way they looked at things slowly, with gravity. When they handed me an apron, saying, "Here if you like," I smiled and put it on. The fabric smelled of flour and something warm, comforting. They stood behind me, not too close, just close enough for me to feel their warmth against my back. "Do you want to learn?" they asked. "I'd love to, yes." And then they placed their hands on mine gently, to help me shape the dough. They spoke little, but their gestures guided mine with an almost meditative slowness. I felt their breath against my neck, a shiver running down my arms, but nothing out of place. Just a presence that surrounded me, that held me. That night, I went home with flour on my fingers and a strange warmth in my stomach. I spent the night tossing and turning, the flour in my hair, the lingering scent of bread on my skin, their gaze etched in my memory. I had forgotten how much a simple act of attention could be unsettling. The sound of the oven, the silence between two movements, everything had become a melody I hadn't heard in a long time. The next morning, I went to the market. I chose fruit slowly. I watched the couples, their smiles, hands brushing. I wasn't trying to understand what was happening to me. I just wanted to prolong that feeling of floating, that delightful disquiet. Even my reflection in the shop window seemed different, more alive. When I returned to the bakery, the owner was already waiting, dressed in their dark apron, sleeves rolled up. They handed me a still warm loaf of bread, fresh from the oven. I placed my fingers on it, feeling the warmth penetrate my palm. Our gazes met. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. That day they waited for me with floured hands, eyes slightly narrowed by the oven's light. They smiled at me a smile that didn't say good morning, but "I've been waiting for you." I put on my apron without a word. My hands barely trembled, but I knew they had seen. The day's dough was denser, warmer. They taught me to fold it, to breathe it in. Yes, breathe, because bread, according to them, had a soul, a rhythm. In between two technical gestures, their fingers brushed mine, their arms drew closer. At one point, they stood behind me to show me how to knead using my body weight. Their torso brushed my shoulders, light but enough to make my breath catch. They said nothing, just corrected my posture. I felt their warmth. I wanted to flee, and at the same time, I wanted to stay. Their hands guided mine, firmer this time. The dough yielded under the pressure, soft and alive, as if responding to our unspoken feelings. They spoke of fermentation, of resting, but their eyes spoke of other things, of contained desire, of lonely evenings, of bodies that knew how to wait. Every detail became intense. Their breath on my temple, the rustle of their apron when they leaned in, the traces of flour on my wrists. I had forgotten that one could desire without a word, without a clear gesture, and yet everything was said. They moved away slightly, leaving me alone with the ball of dough. I kneaded it in silence, my throat dry, my cheeks flushed. When they returned, they handed me a clean cloth and looked at me without smiling. "Want a break?" I nodded. We shared a cup of black tea, sitting face to face between the sacks of flour and baking trays. They placed their hands on the table, large, veined, strong. I watched them more than their face. They sensed it. "You're wondering if what we're doing is right, aren't you?" I didn't answer. They smiled for the first time that evening, a sad smile. "I wonder that every day too." Then they stood up and returned to the oven. The magic was broken, or perhaps just suspended. But I'd understood something. You can't always choose what attracts you, but you can choose how you respond to it. That evening, back home, I undressed slowly, not out of vanity, but out of a need to feel my skin, my own skin. I took a warm bath. I put on a silk nightgown I hadn't worn in years. I unbound my hair. I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. There was a woman within me whom I had left asleep for too long, and she had just awakened. Saturday morning, I arrived earlier than usual. City was still misty. Cafe shutters still closed. Passers-by few. I had put on a simple but flowing olive linen dress with pearlescent buttons down the front. Round my wrist, I had tied that ivory satin ribbon again, the same one as the day before. The knot was there, like a promise or a silent warning. When I opened the bakery door, the owner was already at the oven. They looked up and watched me without surprise. "Wait. You came," they said simply. I didn't need to answer. I hung up my coat, set down my bag, and joined them at the oven. Everything was ready. Sifted flour, crushed nuts, butter at room temperature. We were going to prepare a dried fruit brioche, in their words. But I felt it wasn't just about baking. They approached with a basin of warm water and said, "You can start mixing gently." I plunged my hands into the flour, into the water, into the butter. The movement was slow, almost sensual. Every motion seemed precisely observed. When they leaned over my shoulder to adjust the salt dosage, their lips were so close that I forgot the recipe. I felt their breath against my cheek, the scent of sandalwood and vanilla sugar. They were inches away, but they didn't touch my knot yet. I straightened up. They stepped back. "If you want to leave, now's your chance." I said nothing. I took the ball of dough and placed it on the work surface. I shaped it into a heart, slowly. Then they moved towards me. This time, they took my hands in theirs, not to help me, but to hold them. They squeezed them gently as one holds a precious memory, then they brought them to their lips. They didn't kiss me, not yet. But I felt as if I had been kissed everywhere. I looked into their eyes for a long time until they understood. Until I understood. I untied the ribbon from my wrist and placed it on the table. They led me to the back of the oven room. The curtain was still there, heavy and red. They pulled it behind us, and in the almost sacred silence, I surrendered to them as one surrenders to a breath. No haste, no fury, just the undeniable truth. I felt completely seen, not desired like an object, but welcomed, heard, tasted, loved, perhaps. Or just understood with an intensity that made the walls tremble. When it was over, they gently caressed my wrist where the ribbon had left a fleeting mark. They whispered softly, "Will you come back?" I didn't answer. I put my dress back on, smoothed my hair, and stepped out into the morning light. That day, customers flowed in. Sun was shining, the bread was crisp, smiles were exchanged. I was there, but somewhere else. Every crumb I bagged and every receipt I handed back, I left a part of that night. And that evening, at home, unfolding my scarf, I found a scent of flour, warm skin, and unspoken promises. My partner had returned. They were unpacking their things in the living room. They asked me, "Did everything go well while I was away?" I smiled. Perfectly. But my wrists still vibrated, and my body had learned another language. And you, my love, Have you ever let someone truly see you? If this story resonated with your heart, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, give it a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the silences tell us so much more than words ever could.